The Great Wall of China. This grand construction project lasted 2000 years, supposedly. At least this is the modern version presented by the historians to us. And it has become so widespread that as if people have even forgotten to question things, obvious things like, is this even logical? Why would anybody start building something that will be ready within 2000 years, by which time so many things will change, and by the way, what he has built initially will be already destroyed by time? Or if they were not aware about these two slight problems when they started building the wall, why didn't they stop once they saw that this is the reality? And actually, even according to the official history, we cannot see the oldest parts of the wall because they are in total ruin. And the most what we can see is supposedly built in the 14th century. However, even that is suspiciously well preserved. Buildings, for example, in Europe that were built by the same material at uh, at that time look much worse. But the most important question is why exactly would they build such a structure a few thousand kilometers long? Um, the official history tells us that this has been built with defense purposes. But that's actually very difficult to believe if one applies sober thinking. See, for example, how it passes below a foothill. It will be very easy for a potential enemy armed with arrows to just shoot from the top of the hill and take over the defense of China very easily. On this picture, you can see one of the numerous locations where the wall is beneath a hill, and a potential enemy could easily get to the hill and shower the Chinese soldiers with arrows, and they will simply have nowhere to hide the Chinese. So the version of the defense nature of the Great Wall of China is becoming more and more questionable. The next problem with the defense function of the Great Wall of China is the fact that the towers are located every, let's say, 60 to 100 meters. That's the distance between them. And the full army of the great Chinese kingdom simply wouldn't be enough to service all these towers with sufficient number of soldiers. Basically, it is impossible to assure military presence in all of them. If you put very little soldiers in every tower, then they will be just an easy prey for the enemy, who will quickly kill them before others can come and help them, because the others will be also very few. Or let's think of another version. If they had uh, bigger teams of soldiers but not so near each other, then actually there will be too many segments of the wall that will not be protected, and then the full point of having a defense wall is again gone. It's even funny that the ancient Chinese chronicles themselves say that the wall was inefficient as a defense, basically useless, and that's why they started using other types of warfare. But amazingly enough, the modern historians still tell us that even knowing this, they continued to build the wall dynasty after dynasty. I mean, really, as they say, reality is stranger than fiction. Another interesting detail is that until the end of the 17th century, there isn't any other, even single building in China that was entirely made of with the same construction techniques as the Great Wall. Apparently, they used their building abilities only for the wall and for nothing else. Isn't it this strange? The history assures us that the various dynasties within China itself were constantly in war with each other, yet it never struck them to build defense walls anywhere inside the country. This was an idea that was only for the border. So it seems that the Chinese were sending their best builders and architects to build this enormous structure and drain a lot of energy and finances from their country, and yet in their own chronicles they admit that it has no defense purpose at all. However, the official history version about the Great Wall of China is not the only historic version. There is another one, and although it is not very popular, it is actually much more logical. Over the centuries, China was always at war with their northern neighbors, the Russians. However, in 1689, finally a peace treaty uh, was accepted by both sides. And at that time, the northern boundaries of China were determined. And apparently, the Chinese took this very seriously and decided to mark their territory not only with this agreement but also with a tangible mark on the land itself. Although the Great Wall of China is located exactly where the boundary was set with this peace treaty, this wall itself is not mentioned at all in the city in this treaty. So that strongly suggests that it didn't exist at that time, otherwise it would have been mentioned by convenience. Moreover, the wall is well shown on number of ancient maps. You can see the Great Tartaria is on the north and China is on the south. Actually, the Great Wall is very well depicted on number of maps, ancient maps, which by itself is quite a rare event to have architectural structure depicted on political or geographical maps. On some of them, it is even written the Wall of China. And the thing is that these maps start showing the wall after this peace treaty. They were not showing it before, and that strongly suggests that indeed the wall was built to signify, to mark the exact boundaries of China that were determined by this peace treaty. And so nowadays we read in the news that this amazing archaeological site is getting eroded and falls apart in alarming rate. Apparently, according to the official version, it stood there without problems 1 or 2 thousand years without getting destroyed, and just in recent years it started falling apart like crazy. Of course, they would give all kinds of excuses like air pollution or agriculture. However, in reality, the most logical explanation is that the wall is falling apart in a natural manner with a natural speed, but it's just not that old. It is not thousands of years old. It was built in the 17th century. And by the way, the Great Wall of China looks exactly as a 300-year-old structure should look like at this time. And all these talks about 2000 years of building is actually mostly a myth, a fairy tale, as it is the most of the Chinese history that is officially told to us. I hope I will have time to make more videos on this subject, which is a very, very vast subject, by the way. But now let's get back to the point, back to ancient China, where, by the way, a Great Wall really existed in the antiquity as well. There are some real references to it. And this real wall was actually not very far from what we call nowadays the Great Wall of China. And the Russian scientist and historian Lomonosov is sharing a very interesting observation that he made during his visit of the Great Wall of China in 2010. What happened then was that he was lucky enough to have a very strong binoculars with him, and while doing a tour of the world famous Great Wall of China, he noticed in the valley a structure that really looked like a long wall. It was a long wall, and it was strategically located in the valley in a position that could really have some defense purpose and guard the Chinese capital. What you see at the moment on the screen is most likely the real genuine ancient Great Wall of China, the one mentioned in the chronicles, and it is not made of stone as the modern version, but it is a clay structure which is typical for all the buildings that were created in China in those times. This is a very distant photo, and why only a very distant photo is available is also interesting, because historian Nosovski, he was accompanied during his visit by a team of Chinese historians who were showing him everything. And when he noticed this structure, and they noticed that he saw it as well, they became very uncomfortable and just started waving their hands and were not willing to make any meaningful conversations. He asked them if it is possible to go and have a look at that historic site that he sees in his binocular. However, he was absolutely refused to be taken to the real Wall of China. And maybe one last also interesting point about the modern Great Wall of China, and not the real one, is that yes, it has these towers that seem as if they had some military function, and I'm not sure how it is called in English, but those stone holes that you shoot from at the enemy. But interestingly enough, very interestingly, they are not pointing towards north where the Russian enemy was supposed to be, but often they point to China, and the entries are on the Russian side, and often they are on both sides. There is a version, and there are people on YouTube who have recorded and verified. I myself have never been there, have verified that this is so. There are entries on the Mongolian northern side of the wall, and it is only in the very modern reconstructed areas of the Great Wall of China that it looks like that all the entries were from the Chinese side. So I'm not saying that they're only on one side. What I'm saying is that sometimes they are on one side, sometimes they are on the other, and sometimes both sides. People who have been there, they actually report that they have seen places where current Chinese workers are actively nowadays working on closing the entries on the other side and placing entries only on the Chinese side of the wall. And this is just one more proof that the full thing is probably not the way it is presented to be to us. Probably the Great Wall of China had more transport functions, and mostly as a marker of the Chinese territory. That really seems to be the most logical, real purpose of what we nowadays call the Great Wall of China. What I mean by transport functions is that since it was already built as a marker of the boundary between two countries, and since it is obviously fit for walking on it, it is entirely possible that it was used for cultural exchange. Probably the merchants were walking on it, and maybe that's why it has entries on both sides.